evening, everyone, and welcome to the York-Simcoe Federal All Candidates Debate. I'm Jennifer Anderson, the Executive Director of the Georgina Chamber of Commerce. The objective of the Georgina Chamber is to develop, foster, and promote the well-being and interests of the business community and enhance the quality of life for all of the citizens in Georgina. We achieve this in many ways, including running events like this debate here tonight. It allows constituents, whether here in the room at the Lincoln Sutton or watching at home, to meet the candidates, learn about their platforms, and make an informed decision before casting their ballot. Over the last few years, we've created an online submission for leading up to our debates, and that's to allow constituents to submit questions ahead of time. This year, we also added a survey on our website, and that was to ask York-Simcoe residents to list their top 5 federal issues. The survey results dictate the order in which we are asking our questions tonight. I would like to welcome the candidates who are here tonight, and I would also like to congratulate and thank all 6 of the candidates for your dedication and efforts. Thank you for everyone here in attendance at the link, and for those who are joining us live and watching us online. You have the ability to watch TV and online on Rogers TV Georgina, and that's thanks to our local community TV station. We are so fortunate to have the television station in our community, and it's dedicated to informing our residents. This debate will air multiple times before and including Election Day, and we will be live on election night covering the results close to home and right across the country. I'd also like to thank and introduce this lady who's sitting right next to me. She is the moderator for this evening. She has committed a lot of time, and we thank her for her time and commitment. She is the founder of the Georgina Post and host of Politically Speaking on Rogers TV Georgina. Please welcome our moderator this evening, Karen Wolf.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's an honor and a pleasure for me to be here, and I'm looking forward to an informative and an interesting debate. I also want to welcome our viewing audience on television and, of course, residents that are joining us here at the link. We're going to be together for 2 hours, and so I'm hoping that the evening is going to meet all of your expectations. As Jennifer mentioned, this debate is brought to you by the Georgina Chamber of Commerce and Rogers TV Georgina, and I personally want to thank them for giving us an opportunity to get to know our candidates better. Right now, actually, I would like to begin the debate by acknowledging that the town of Georgina is located over lands originally used and occupied by the First Peoples of the Williams Treaty First Nation and other Indigenous peoples, and we thank them for sharing this land. We would also like to acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation as our close neighbor and friend, and one with which we strive to build a cooperative and respectful relationship. So I'll be introducing the candidates to you in a moment, but first I want to explain some of the ground rules that we're going to be following on the debate this evening. So each candidate is going to be given 2 minutes at the beginning for an opening statement. The order in which the candidates will speak was determined earlier this evening by a random draw, and that order will be reversed for the 2 minutes that each have for closing statements. I'll rotate through the candidates, giving each one an opportunity to answer the question first, and that will be followed by answers from the rest of the panel. The questions and their order are based on the polling data submitted by the public during the debate outreach campaign, which was conducted by the Georgina Chamber of Commerce and the one that Jennifer mentioned a little while ago. In addition, the audience that's with us here this evening has been encouraged to submit questions in written form. All of the questions received are vetted to meet our time restraints and to avoid duplication. And so, while we may not be able to get to every question that was submitted, we hope to cover as many topics as possible. The answers to the questions will be limited to 1 minute. Candidates wishing an opportunity to comment on something they've heard will raise their hands to be recognized by the moderator prior to the next question. Rebuttal opportunities could be restricted due to time constraints. Our timekeeper, Taylor Felix, will signal with a time card when a candidate has 30 seconds remaining, and then when there are 10 seconds remaining. At the end of your time, a bell will ring, which will signal that your time is finished. We are looking forward to a respectful and informative 2 hours of discussion. We have an important decision ahead of us, and I encourage everyone to make the most of our time together. So without further ado, it is now my pleasure to introduce 5 candidates in the York-Simcoe riding who are seeking your vote on October the 21st. In the first position, we have Keith Comar from the Libertarian Party of Canada. Next is Jessa McLean, representing the New Democratic Party. Next is Scott Davidson, the Conservative Party of Canada. Next to him is Michael Lauder, the People's Party of Canada. And in the 5th position is Jonathan Arnold, the Green Party of Canada. The York-Simcoe candidate for the Liberal Party of Canada is Cynthia Wesley Esquimalt. However, she was unable to join us this evening. She has pre-recorded an opening statement, however, which will be broadcast following this debate on Rogers TV. So at this point, we're going to start our discussions with opening statements, and I would like to remind you that you have 2 minutes for your opening remarks, and I want to invite Keith Comar to begin.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. I believe that voting is our most important duty as citizens of this country. My mother was born in Saskatchewan. She's a farm lady, but my father was an immigrant from Croatia. He immigrated here to Canada in '56, and he left communism. It was a tough time where he came from. It was a different era. But it's nice that we had a place like Canada for him to come and flourish. But I see that disappearing rapidly. Our government is upside down in this country. Our federal government makes all the promises, takes all the tax dollars, and gets nothing done. The provinces are left with a part of that budget to try to fix what the federal government has done, and then the municipalities are left holding the bag with very little tax dollars and all of the responsibilities. So we would like to fix that. We would like to represent you in a different way. We would like to see the federal government restrained and restricted back to a more accountable and responsible situation. We would like to see the municipalities have the power to do change and affect positive things for the community. Now, if you notice, I don't take notes. I don't write anything down ahead of time. I like to speak off the top of my head. That way, you know, it's coming from my heart. It's not a talking point that my party has organized for me. And I believe that that's a very important thing that we need to do, is we need to speak from our heart, and we need to be engaged with the people. So tonight you're going to hear a lot of things about a lot of promises, and I want you to remember that each one of those promises comes with a dollar sign to it. And whether they say it's free or not, we all understand that it's taxpayer funded. So be very, very clear when you're hearing these kind of things tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Jessa McLean, New Democratic Party.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Yeah, my name is Jessa McLean, and I'm running for the New Democratic Party of Canada. So as you sit here during this debate, I want you to really listen. I want you to listen for substance, and I want you to listen for new ideas, because what our governments have been doing for the last 150 years has essentially been the same thing, whether they are blue or red, and our lives haven't really been getting much better. The NDP platform is completely aimed at making life more affordable for all people who live in Canada and for targeting climate change. It is a bold platform, and don't let anybody fool you. We have a plan to pay for it all. We're going to put in place head-to-toe health care that's going to be truly comprehensive and will fulfill that vision that Tommy Douglas had of universal health care. We are going to tackle the housing crisis, something that affects our riding substantially. We're going to fix our taxation system that puts far too much of the burden on regular Canadians and lets big corporations and the ultra-wealthy off the hook. We're going to work towards meaningful, true reconciliation with Indigenous people. We are going to listen to them, and we are going to get their help when it's time to protect the environment and fix their communities. All these things that I'm going to mention are totally possible if we just start thinking outside the box. If we just stop and break our old habits of voting for the same two parties over and over again and expecting different results. We need real leadership. We need an advocate in Ottawa. We don't need more business lobbying. Because essentially what we need is better social policies. What you need is the NDP. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessa. Scott Davidson, Conservative Party of Canada.
Good evening. Thank you to the Georgina Chamber of Commerce for organizing this debate and Rogers TV for broadcasting it. And good evening, voters of York-Simcoe. I am so positive for our future. York-Simcoe has been my home my entire life. I grew up here, owned and operated businesses here, and raised a family here. For the past few months, I've had the honor of serving as Member of Parliament for York-Simcoe, and I've been working hard to stand up for the interests of our community in the House of Commons. Since being elected, I've heard the same thing over and over again. Under Justin Trudeau's Liberal government, the residents of York-Simcoe have been working harder and harder, but they're barely getting by and just can't seem to get ahead. Canada's Conservatives have a plan that will lower taxes and put more money in your pockets while creating better, high-paying jobs in our community. This plan will also lower emissions, protect the environment, while supporting meaningful initiatives, like the Lake Simcoe Cleanup Fund, that has been so critical to protecting and restoring our lake before it was canceled by the current Liberal government. The Conservative plan will also support small businesses, farmers, veterans, and seniors who call York-Simcoe home and protect and strengthen our public health care system. For too long, the residents of York-Simcoe have found themselves on the outside looking in, while our roads and bridges have crumbled and our internet speeds have slowed to a crawl. The Conservative plan will ensure that rural communities are not forgotten and York-Simcoe will receive its fair share of federal infrastructure dollars. I am someone who doesn't stop until the job gets done. That is why I am running one more to champion the people of York-Simcoe so they can get ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Michael Lauder, the People's Party of Canada.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the organizers for organizing this debate, and thank you to the candidates for coming out to present their party platforms. But most importantly, thank you to the constituents for giving us the opportunity to answer questions and hopefully provide you with more information regarding our policies. My name is Michael Lauder, and I'm running as the candidate for the People's Party of Canada. I've been a resident in the area for a little over 15 years, having landed in Sudbury, Ontario in 1997. I attended college up there and received a diploma in public relations. After working in different areas in Ontario, I settled in Bradford, where I have 2 children, and am a part of the community. The People's Party of Canada is a new party. We're just over a year old, but we have managed to put candidates in over 90% of the electoral ridings in Canada. Tonight, you will hear snippets of party platforms in answer to questions. Some you may not agree with, others might pique your interest, and I know some will be wildly unpopular. However, the goal of this evening is to provide information and encourage more discussion. One of our democratic freedoms in this country is to vote for our representation in the House of Commons, and we need to elect these representatives with the knowledge they will bring our concerns to the forefront and will implement change for the benefit of all Canadians. Having trust that they will protect our rights and freedoms and represent us and negotiate for us on the global stage as a unified country. Thank you.
And next we have Jonathan Arnold, the Green Party of Canada.
Thank you. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I know we have busy lives, but it's an important process of our democracy to not only meet the candidates, but understand the platforms and find out who and why we're sending people to Parliament to represent our communities. My name is Jonathan. I'm running for the Green Party, and I live in East Gwillimbury. I was born and raised here, and I run a small business just outside of Mount Albert. Our business is Shady Lane Expert Tree Care, and we've been running that as a family business for about 45 years. Now, before you start doing math in your head, I'm not 60 years old. I'm a second-generation owner-operator, and I'm very proud of the work we've done and what we've committed to our community. I live on a small 10-acre farm, and I have 2 beautiful children, which are a big reason I'm running for the Green Party. I have a boy and a girl, and that's called a $1 million family. And I think they call it that because it's going to cost me $1 million to raise them. And maybe that's another reason I want to run. But mostly I'd like to stop the dysfunction and the divisiveness of our politics. We are a community and we are a country, and we need to start working together to start tackling the big problems we have facing our future generations and the discourse in our politics. I would like to work towards removing corporate interests in our politics and remove the political and economic monopoly that is tearing apart our country. I see all of these challenges as opportunities. I can't help it. It's the entrepreneurial spirit within me. But we're going to have to pay for all of this. And how we're going to do that is we're going to stop subsidizing big oil. We're going to tax Google, Amazon, Facebook that run away with billions of dollars in revenue untaxed. And we're going to tax the 0.2% of the richest people. We can work towards a green economy. If we build a green economy, we can rebuild our electoral system. And if we don't have healthy food and water, what do we have? Thank you.
Thank you all, and now on to our lineup of questions. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to rotate as we go along, but I'm going to ask Justin McLean from the NDP party to begin with an answer to this question. As voter participation dwindles and public apathy towards politics grows, what do you believe to be the cause, and how can we turn this around?
So I think we can all agree that a lot of people have completely checked out of the process. Our voter turnout during the by-election was abysmal. And I think the reason that happens when I go door to door is what you're hearing is nothing changes for people. Nothing changes. Whether they vote for a winner or not, their lives don't change. And that's because we essentially keep sending the same people, the same type of parties to Ottawa for the last 150 years. They have the same ideas of lowering corporate tax and expecting it to trickle down to us. They cut our public services to try to balance books, but we all know the national debt is out of control, and that has nothing to do with the NDP. So people have just lost hope that whether they go to the ballot box or whether they don't, it won't make a difference in their lives, but that's because we've never had a shot at ruling Canada. We've never had a shot to really implement true socialist values that will help bring back our social services and support the people who really need it. So I encourage you to check back in. Thank you.
Scott Davidson?
Thank you. The by-election, it was a tough election. It was in the middle of the winter time, and a lot of people are checked out in a by-election. And for me, I feel it's our job as candidates to have events like this and to knock on as many doors as possible so we can get everyone we can engaged. That's why it's our jobs to get signs out, to get people involved. And I work awfully hard to get to as many doors as I can to get people out. And it is also going to be our job as candidates to run a great get out the vote. And that is how we are going to encourage participation in these elections and hope that everyone that can comes out and votes.
Thank you. Michael Lauder.
The thing that I've heard when I speak to people about voting is they've lost faith in the system with sending the same people to Ottawa to come back and give the same results, which they feel is nothing. People also believe that their vote doesn't count for anything, but we need people to understand that every vote that comes out does count. It doesn't matter whether you come out and vote because you believe in that candidate or believe in that candidate's policies. We need to have an open dialogue with our candidates, with our constituents, and let them know that we are there, listen to what they have to say, and engage them in the actual process of coming out to vote. Every vote matters, and we need people to come out and tell us what they want, and tell us who they want to represent them in the House of Commons.
Thank you. Jonathan,
Thank you. Divisive politics is an issue, and I received a phone call from the Conservative government asking me to vote for them, which is great. They're getting people engaged, and I heard 20 slanders on Justin Trudeau. And when I asked the lady on the end of the phone if she could give me any policy or anything else, she said no. And that's a big problem. We have to stop cutting each other down and start working together as a community. Minority governments get things done. EI, healthcare, and CPP were all put together by a minority government, and those are some of the most fundamental values that we have as Canadians. We need to start voting for something rather than against something, and it's one of the #1 reasons that I'm running. First and foremost, I would love it if we stopped subsidizing big oil. This has been promised to us since the Harper days. Everyone promises it, no one delivers, and it's a big bone of contention with anyone who's concerned about the environment. Thank you.
thank you. Keith Comer.
I think people aren't inspired anymore by their politicians. There was a time when, people would look up to their politicians, and now the people we're electing are basically laughing stocks. We look at what's happened federally this cycle with all of the different scandals, and then you go to the one before that, it was the same thing, and people have just lost faith. And on top of that, the two working as many jobs as they possibly can just to keep a roof over their head. They don't have the time to engage. So it is our job to inspire people and to give them something different and show them that there is hope and that there is change on the horizon. So that's up to us to do that, and hopefully we can do that for you. Thank you.
I just want to say the doors that I've been at, people are actually very excited about this election, and they are very hopeful for the future. And our party, I can tell you right here in Georgina, we offer, and I worked hard for it to put the Lake Simcoe Cleanup Fund back in policy, and people are excited to have a chance at that if we can form a majority government. And that is something I worked hard for, and people are very excited about that. So I just want to add that to the conversation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next question goes to Scott Davidson. The Chamber of Commerce polling results showed that taxes was the #1 issue for voters. All parties are making costly promises, and the question on most people's minds is, how will you pay for your promises without increasing taxes? And Mr. Davidson will go first.
No, thank you. Justin Trudeau, he is just not as advertised. He has raised taxes, racked up debts and deficits, and made life more expensive for people like you in this room. We have a plan that's going to change that, to help the economy and increase things on the revenue side. We're going to scrap the carbon tax. We are going to remove GST off home heating bills and home energy costs. We are going to make maternity benefits tax-free. We are going to provide a universal tax cut to all Canadians, especially targeting those in the lower tax brackets. We are going to make transit passes more affordable by implementing the green tax credit. For public transit, we are going to reintroduce and implement a children's fitness tax credit and a children's art and learning tax credit. And we are also, for education, going to boost the registered education savings plans for families.
Thank you very much. Michael Lutter.
The People's Party of Canada wants to introduce a simple taxation system where you're not bogged down with convoluted ways in which you can submit your taxes and convoluted boutique tax credits. How we're going to pay for the promises that we make is quite simple. We're going to cut foreign aid. It's in the realm of about $6.1 billion a year that we send outside of this country. Now, we're not going to cut off humanitarian aid, but we are going to look at campaigning for the Security Council seat in the UN. It cost us $1 million, and we haven't even got anywhere in that yet. Cutting the foreign aid, cutting corporate subsidies is what's going to keep money in people's pockets. We don't want to take it away from you and give you a tax credit for it. We're just going to simply cut it down. We're also going to eliminate things like the carbon tax, which serves absolutely no purpose for any Canadian.
Thank you. Jonathan Arnold.
Well, the answer is simple. It's called fair taxation. But first and foremost, I'd like to tell a little tale that my dad told me, because I'm a small business owner, and small business owners complain about tax all the time because we feel like we get taxed 3 or 4 times. And what my father taught me is the more money you make, the more taxes you pay. So the more taxes you pay, you should be happy. A little bit of a silver lining there for everybody. If we tax the 0.2% of the wealthiest people, that's a great start. They have 90% of the world's wealth, and we never talk about taxing the wealthiest people. Amazon, Google, Facebook, billions of dollars in revenue that run away, and it's really about fair taxation. And the other part of the Green Party solution is building a green economy. So taking our energy sector, putting it into green and sustainable energy, and actually building wealth in our communities. If you have wealth, taxes don't become as much of an issue, and it's about disbursement of wealth, not about taxation. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith Comer.
This is my favorite part of the debate. We're not making you all these promises. We want to shrink the federal government. We think that these solutions that each community has are individual to the community. What's good for Sutton is not good for Sudbury, and it might not be good for Mississauga. So to have Ottawa try to solve the problems of each community with one size fits all government doesn't work. So we need to restrict the federal government and shrink it. So I'm not here to make you all these promises. I'm here to say we would restrict the federal government. We would shrink it back down to its original purpose. That's a beautiful thing, and the people here want to hear that. That's what we have all been looking for. Is a responsible, accountable government that leaves the money in our pockets. The next thing I want to mention here is nobody talks about it, is in 1974, the Bank of Canada changed on us, and our debt was only $18 billion then. In 6 years, it went to $300 billion, and we need to look at what happened in 1974 and how to fix that.
Thank you. Justin McLean.
The NDP has the greatest plan for making our tax system more fair. What we're going to do is we're going to put a 1% tax on the people who are worth more than $20 million, and that is going to bring in $70 billion over the next 10 years. You hear the Conservatives talk about tax credits and cutting taxes by very small amounts that won't really affect you, and what that'll do is it'll hurt our revenue source. They don't have a plan to actually replace that revenue, so what's going to suffer? Our public services. We've seen it here in Ontario. It's the same plan that they're going to have federally. We allow corporations to hide their money offshore, and the wealthy use these tax loopholes that we know about. We are going to close those tax loopholes at about $25 million a year. It's astronomical the amount of money we can raise when we're bold enough to stand up to big corporations and tell the ultra wealthy that it's about time that they pay their fair share. On top of that, we have so many plans to make life more affordable for working class people right across the board, from your cell phone bills. Yeah, thank you.
Any debate on that question from any of you? You're all happy with those answers? All right, the next question, Michael Lutter is going to begin, and it is, the Canadian public recognizes that climate change and global warming are key environmental issues that need to be addressed by the federal government. What is your party's plan for addressing the climate crisis?
Awesome. This is one of those wildly unpopular topics. We do not believe that there is a climate change crisis. We do believe that there is climate change. And what we want to do is we want to hold the countries that are responsible for the greenhouse gas emissions responsible. We produce less than 2% of the carbon dioxide, which is what people are saying is creating this climate crisis. The Paris Accord, which was signed by the Liberal government, actually allows the two biggest polluters to double their pollution until 2030, at which point they can then turn around and buy credits, carbon credits from the IPCC, which we have paid into. And that is not fair.
Thank you. Jonathan Arnold.
Well, as the Green Party, this is part of our platform. We are the only party that plans on meeting our agreement with the UN and cutting emissions by 60% or less by 2030. First thing we need to do is stop oil subsidies immediately and cancel all pipelines. $14.5 billion in pipeline, biggest subsidy in our history. We need to build an oil refinery, which might shock everyone here, but we need to value add our resources and stop shipping our resources to other countries. We are going to build 300,000 jobs by retrofitting homes and building a green energy sector that is nationwide. Currently, our energy sector is pretty much dominant to one or two big conglomerates, and if we build an energy sector that is nationwide, we will bring jobs, small business, and wealth locally. It is not only the future of Canada, but it is the future of our global initiative, and we need to be leaders as always. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith Comer.
Michael, it's not as unpopular as you'd think. More and more people are starting to look at climate change on both sides of the angle. And from what we see, there's still a lot of debate. The science isn't closed. There's still a lot of debate as to whether there is a crisis or not. So I think we need to look at that. But that isn't the real issue here. The real issue is the pollutants that these corporations are putting into our waters and our streams and into our land. And that has been missed in the conversation. We've all been so focused on carbon dioxide that we've lost the conversation as to these pollutants that are going into our streams and our rivers. So we need to get back to that conversation. And we need to hold businesses accountable that are polluting our waters and our lands and focus on that and let the climate do its thing.
Thank you. Jessa McLean.
So it's clear we're lacking in real leadership when it comes to tackling climate change. The Liberals declared a climate emergency and then the next day bought a $4.5 billion pipeline. The NDP, I can possibly go through it in a minute, but I'm going to try. We're going to cut emissions twice as fast as the Liberals, who held to Harper's numbers, which are just pathetic. Our plan will create 300,000 jobs across Canada that are green, well-paying jobs, and York-Simcoe has the potential to get some of those jobs. We're going to electrify public transit. We're going to stop the fossil fuel subsidies. We are going to be world leaders in innovative green technology by creating a bank that we will invest in that will allow us to expand the horizons of what's possible. We need to fight the climate change like we want to win it. There's no denying it. There's no denying that it's human-made. It's time to act responsible and be real leaders. And the NDP is totally ready to do that.
Okay, I'm going to let Scott Davidson answer the question, and then I will go to those of you that want to debate this.
Thank you. Canada's Conservatives have a real plan to protect the environment. We've came out with a 78-page document on an environmental plan that is the most in-depth plan that any party has ever brought forth. We believe that green technology, not carbon taxes, is the best way to lower Canada's emission. We will promote a cleaner, greener natural environment while taking the fight against climate change global. This is a global problem and it deserves a global response. As part of this comprehensive plan, a new Conservative government will restore the York-Simcoe Cleanup Fund, canceled by the Liberals, with a $30 million investment in the riding over 4 years, which again I championed as MP and made that commitment in the by-election. The Cleanup Fund will partner with local environmental groups to protect and restore the lake and ensure it is protected for future generations. Only the Conservative Party has a specific plan to protect York-Simcoe in addition to other environmental incentives.
Thank you. I'm delighted to see that this question is going to get some debate because it was number 2 in the poll. And first is Jonathan from the Green Party.
So Lake Simcoe is important, but we can't hide behind Lake Simcoe as an environmental initiative. That's exactly what the Conservative Party is doing. And what's really perturbing about it is the fact that Lake Simcoe is a provincial lake. That's why the signs say, Carolyn Mulrooney, will you save our lake? If Scott Davison puts the fund through, which I believe he will if he's elected, Doug Ford will gut the plan. Rob won't do it. Doug Ford will gut the plan because it will go through the provincial government. It is a provincial lake. And recently I heard the Conservative MP put out an article saying that climate change, people are fear-mongering, and that is not the type of leadership we need. Climate change is compounding mental health issues, and if you're talking about climate change, in order to save your lake, you have to address climate change. Climate change, the Conservative Party has the weakest platform when it comes to climate action. Please do not be fooled by the myth of Lake Simcoe and the empty promises.
Thank you.
That is a provincial lake.
Thank you very much. Next, Keith Comer.
Conservatives will be glad to know that we actually have the weakest climate change policy because we don't see it as an issue. The climate changes. The climate has always changed. In 1978, we were looking at an ice age. Everybody was announcing it. We're freezing. The country's cooling. Now here we are. We're heating up again. It's a cycle. It's happened over and over again. This is the 4th different one in my life. I'm only 48 years old. It's how little we forget how this changes over time, back and forth. So there's science out there saying that this isn't the issue that we think it is. And I urge you all to look into this on both sides of the conversation. There is denying it. There is the other side of this conversation, Jessica.
Thank you. Next, Jessa.
One person.
Okay, so I hear some snickering when you hear the deniers talk on either side of me. I just want to remind you all that when given the opportunity, Scott Davidson voted against declaring a climate emergency in Parliament. That's how he's representing climate change. On top of that, he can throw as much money as he wants at the Lake Simcoe Fund, but it was his party that gutted waterway protections under Harper, and the Liberals never bothered to restore them all. If we don't stop the pollutants from going in the lake, how many times are we going to create a fund to try to clean it up? That's just to make him popular here, and I'm not playing that game. On top of that, their deputy leader openly stated that climate change is not related to human activity. So they cannot be trusted whatsoever when it comes to climate change.
Thank you very much. Scott Davidson.
All I can tell you is Lake Simcoe is the #1 concern that's coming up at the doors in York-Simcoe locally for climate change. Number 2, the Conservatives voted against a motion, not a bill in the House of Commons on a climate emergency because it didn't go far enough. And we came out with our own motion that was voted on, and the Green Party voted with us on our motion to correct the record.
Thank you. I'm going to go on to the next question, and we're going to ask Jonathan Arnold to begin. Owning your own home is a dream that is now out of reach for many York-Simcoe residents. As each party promises to help make housing more affordable, how do you intend to force a change in a market that is heavily driven by supply and demand?
Thank you for the question. Affordable housing is a great interest to York-Simcoe residents because we have so much proposed development. The Green Party of Canada has a great solution. We would like to develop a Minister of Housing. A Minister of Housing will be allocated to work with every province individually and assign those provinces municipal resources to make housing affordable. Some of those policies will create tax incentives for developers to make low-income housing more available. We will also ask municipal planning partners to work on development processes and include low-income housing within new development areas. We need to immerse our housing and make sure that affordable housing is here for people. Lastly, I would like us to work towards a percentage of our housing to be net zero housing. It would be a great opportunity for us to work towards better houses in general. Some of the opportunities for net zero housing are very real and available, and we can work towards that, which would be very helpful with our Lake Simcoe cleanup and create results.
Thank you very much. Keith Comer.
I see the affordable housing issue as driven by the inflation of our currency. When my dad first bought his house in '56, it was $4,500. He was making $225 an hour. He was making just about as much in a year as his house cost. I make good money. I'm a bricklayer. I make $40 an hour. Take about $75,000, $80,000 a year. A house is $600,000. The two haven't followed each other. The currency has been inflated to the point where the value of the money has gone. So this isn't an affordable housing issue. This is a currency issue. This is a money in my pocket issue that we need to address. We need to fix the Bank of Canada. We need to take back control of our currency. We need to get it out of the hands of the IMF. We need to print our own money again like we did back when we created the St. Lawrence Seaway and we built the CN Rail and we did the Trans-Canada Highway. When we spent that money into existence without debt. That's the solution to this problem. If we fix our currency, everybody has an affordable wage again.
Thank you. Jess McLean.
Affordable housing is one of the cornerstones of the NDP platform. What we're going to do is we're going to build 500,000 affordable units across Canada. And what that's going to do, it's not just for homeowners, this is for renters. And this isn't just about the 1 million homeless people we have across Canada. You're right, first-time home buyers are having a tough go at it. So we're going to extend first-time mortgages to 30 years. And we're going to up the credit to $1,500 to help your kids get out of the house and get into a home. The Liberals and the Conservatives might make a lot of promises here, but we have to remember the Liberals campaigned in 2015 on affordable housing, and they basically shelved it. The Conservatives completely gutted all funding for cooperative housing. That is essentially what led to our homelessness crisis. We know that housing is a human right. What are our rights if you don't have shelter? And it's time that our government treated it as such. So I encourage you to vote the NDP and really take a more viable plan into an account. Thank you.
Scott Davidson next, please.
It is important that we look into ways to make home ownership more affordable for first-time home buyers, in addition to looking at the issue of affordable housing for low-income individuals. It's curious when you go to the doors, you'll speak with people that have saved all their life and have been a house for 30 years and have said, Scott, don't mess with the price of housing. This is my nest egg. I'm relying on this for my retirement. And the new couple that just bought a house and put 5% down that don't want that value to go down and they've started saving. So this is a complicated problem, but we're going to introduce 4 new measures to make it easier for first-time homebuyers to buy a home. First, fix the mortgage stress test to ensure that first-time homebuyers aren't unnecessarily prevented from accessing mortgages. Increase amortization periods to 30 years for first-time homebuyers. We are going to launch an inquiry into money laundering in the real estate sector and make surplus federal real estate available for development and for developers.
Thank you very much. And next, Michael Lauder.
In order to be able to buy a house, you need to have money in your pocket. And in order to do that, we're going to cut taxes. It's quite simple. If you have money in your pocket, you can afford a home. Simply extending the time of a mortgage from 25 to 30 years extends the time that you're in debt. You're still paying for that mortgage. Reducing the stress test might expose people to a mortgage that they can't afford come down the road. It takes a lot of money to maintain a home also, and that is something that people have to look at. We also believe that the supply and demand issue comes where we have multiple people bidding on homes, and a lot of that is tied to how we are artificially inflating our population in Canada. With mass immigration coming in, and you're looking at hundreds of thousands of people coming into the country, and we're only having 70,000 home starts in Ontario. Where are those people going to live, including the people that are leaving home for the first time?
Thank you very much. Okay, our next question is for Keith Comer, right? Am I on the right page? Yeah, no, we just had Jonathan. So Keith Comer, this is your question to start. And this comes from our audience here. I earn $65,000 a year, and I have one healthy child. After I pay taxes, mortgage, car, and commute, expenses, and childcare, I put groceries on credit. What can you do for me?
Well, two things. We would fix your currency. We would make your money worth something again so that it would go a lot further. And we would have a flat tax. We think that if you really wanted to tax the rich, you have a flat tax, you remove all the loopholes, you have 15% flat tax, you put a $30,000 start. Anybody who makes under $30,000 doesn't pay tax. Anybody who makes over $30,000 pays 15%. You erase all of the loopholes, you take away all of these little boutique tax credits. I hear a lot of what the Conservatives say, you know, a piece of the GST and a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and you're just complicating the whole situation. Flat tax, everybody pays their share. Those who aren't making over $30,000 don't pay it, and that would do a lot to help that person making $65,000 a year stretch their money and go further.
Thank you. Jesse McLean.
I think whoever asked that question, I mean, you're not alone. That's the majority of Canadians right now. Statistics Canada tells us the bottom 40% of us are earning less and less every year. That's under Liberals and Conservatives. They're not making life more affordable. We will. We'll start by simple things. Cutting your cell phone bill. We pay the highest cell phone bill. We'll actually hold those telecoms accountable, and we'll put caps on those plans. We are going to provide head-to-toe health care. Do you know how much money that will save you if you don't have to pay for your medications, for your dental care, vision, hearing, mental health care that's really now only reserved for the rich? It's crucial that we have a fair taxation plan that puts that burden back on the 1% so that we can have those public services that are there as a social safety net. That includes beefing up EI for when we lose our jobs to get us to that next job. So, you know, if you're out there, you're in the audience, you're not alone, and there's so many things the NDP is going to do that it will help you not have to put your groceries on credit, because that's a shame.
Thank you very much. Scott Davidson next, please.
Again, this is one of the biggest issues at the doors, is about how life has gotten more expensive. It comes from just going to your local Sobeys and buying vegetables. And all the new taxes that have came out on Justin Trudeau's Liberals has inched it up, inched it up, inched it up. And that's why we don't believe in taxing people to the extreme. And that's why we are going to scrap the carbon tax, remove the GST off home heating bills and home energy costs. These things make a difference at the end of the day. We are going to make transit passes more affordable by implementing the green tax credit for public transit. Parents relied on, and they're looking for the fitness tax credit and something, if their kids are going to play hockey, that they can enjoy that, because life has just gotten so much more expensive.
Okay. Thank you. Michael Nutter.
I think it comes down to how you're taxed, how much you're taxed on your income. A simple two-tiered tax system where at below $15,000 you're not paying tax, and you're paying 25% tax over $100,000 is keeping money in people's pockets. Boutique tax credits take the money out of your pocket and you get a small percentage of it back the next time you file your taxes. But in the meantime, you are still having to live paycheck to paycheck. The government continues to dip into your pocket, whether it's through one tax or another. The carbon tax that the Conservatives are talking about scrapping, they will, but only in 2022. What are we going to do between now and then? Those people who are still paying those taxes need that money to stay in their pocket, not be taken out.
Thank you very much. And Jonathan Arnold, please.
Thank you. So first and foremost, reduce costs. The Green Party of Canada would like to also initialize universal health care, including dental, which would take some of the day-to-day costs out of everyone's lives. But we would also like universal pharmacare. And universal pharmacare will take pharmaceutical expenses not only out of your household, but out of small business. And hopefully some of those small businesses can relay some of those savings back to their employees. Secondly, I'd like to talk about a green economy. A green economy is going to help disperse wealth throughout our communities. A energy sector that is nationwide will bring small jobs and great jobs within our communities, and it'll help disperse wealth. Lastly, we need to stop subsidizing big oil and making sure that our pharmaceuticals and other companies don't run away with our wealth. It's about taxation and fair disbursement of our wealth. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessa, you wanted to say something here?
Just briefly, I wanted to hit the point again of tax credits. Those are for people who can afford to put the money up front and then have to wait until your tax return the very next year. These tax incentives that they have are essentially geared towards upper class people and will not help people that are putting their Sobeys, I can't afford Sobeys, no frills on credit. So these are all, the Conservatives and the Liberals consistently aim for what they call the middle class, which is typically defined by them as $200,000 or more. So keep this in mind when you hear these great promises about camp credits and this and that, but you need to be able to afford all that money up front, and I don't think that's the case for the person asking this question.
Keith?
Half of that. And I agree that that person doesn't have that money to put out of their pocket up front, but they also don't have the money to pay for all of these extra things that you want to add on. Universal health care, universal pharmacare, these come at a cost. And everybody in here who already pays for these systems right now with their tax dollars understands that. That's part of the problem that we're in right now, is we have a bloated system that has way too much administration in it. We need to streamline the system. If you want to actually do something for the Canadian people, take the 42% of administration that the government has and kill all those redundancies and really work hard to have the government work like a proper business. If we ran a business in the private sector like the government runs the public sector, we'd be broke, we'd be out of business, and it wouldn't take very long for that to happen. That's where what we need to do is work and focus on that, I think.
Okay. And Jonathan, I think you wanted to speak to this.
It's easy to pay for all these things. We just need to get the wealth out of the people that have the wealth. We need to tax the 0.2%. We need to tax the big corporations. We need to stop big oil subsidies. We need to stop the divisive politics. And we need to put the people first rather than corporate interests. It's corporate interests in our politics that are leading us to this demise. And it's a simple solution. Take back our energy sector. Clean energy is free, it's endless, and we need a multitude of energy sectors across our nation, which disperses our jobs and brings our wealth locally. If you want to tackle the problem, let's tackle it from the root. Let's actually create a solution. And that's what we're talking about with the Green Party of Canada, and that's what we need. We need to stop divisive politics, and we need to start voting for something rather than against it. It is that simple. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're coming up to our break, so I just have the next question. We're going to start with Jess McLean, but it's going to be a yes or no. For sure, you're going to answer yes or no, and you have about 30 seconds to support your yes or no, because we're going to have to take a break. So the question, do you and your party support the Upper York sewage solution? Yes or no? Jessa, please.
No, absolutely not. This was done despite the pleas from the Chippewas of Georgina Island. So this is exactly what we're talking about false reconciliation. Not only that, we can throw all the money we want into a fund, but if we're going to allow Newmarket and Aurora sewage to be dumped into our lake, then it's just an uphill battle.
Okay, thank you. Scott Davidson, please.
No, in its current form, I certainly do not support it. There are so many issues, and this takes much more than 30 seconds, but there's the environment. The end of Cook's Bay is not going to freeze. There's a sediment move. There's the effect on fish stocking. There's effect on the temperature of water with 56 million liters at 55 degrees coming in every day. There are so many scientific questions that have not been answered on this, and I'm still waiting for the answers on this. Town of Georgina is worried about growth. We currently have 16 other old, anyway, okay.
Michael Loder, please.
No, the simple reason being that we need to take care of the environment that we live in. If we're not going to bother to put the effort in to finding alternative solutions that don't hurt us currently in our environment, then what are we doing up here as candidates to to push for an environmental solution that benefits everybody.
Thank you very much. Jonathan Arnold.
That's a hard no for us as well. We went out and we visited with Brandon Stiles on Georgina Island with the Chippewa Nations, and we discussed it in-depthly, and they were not consulted appropriately. That sewage plant will be the demise of our lake, and we need to work towards better solutions for our sewage instead of putting it into the water we drink. Let me be very clear, water is life. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith Comer.
A hard no. I agree with everybody on this panel. It's not the solution. We can do better. We can come up with a better solution than this.
All right. Anybody want to add anything? Got a few minutes? No? Okay. We're going to take a station break for a few minutes, but please don't go away. We will be back shortly with our panel of candidates, so stay tuned for more issues and more debate.
York-Simcoe Federal All Candidates Debate. I'm Jennifer Anderson with the Chamber of Commerce. Once again, I'd like to introduce our moderator for this evening. She is the founder of the Georgina Post and the host of Politically Speaking on Rogers TV Georgina, Karen Wolf.
Thank you again, Jennifer. I hope you have enjoyed the first half of this program. I can assure you we are not going to get through all of these questions. But we're going to soldier on here. The next question I'm going to ask Scott Davidson to take first, and that is, Canadians spend $254 billion on health care, and yet they are still waiting for care in hospital hallways. What will your party do to make sure Canadians get the health care they deserve?
This is one thing that comes up at the doors a number of times with residents in York-Simcoe, and people are very concerned about health care. And under a new Conservative government, Canadians will be able to count on stable and predictable health and social funding programs. I'm a strong believer in our public health care systems, and I will work and protect to strengthen it as Member of Parliament for York-Simcoe. There's a big cry that York-Simcoe, South Lake Hospital is overburdened. And in all of York-Simcoe, you figure Bradford, East Gwillimbury, Georgina, look at the clinics that have closed, the nurse practitioners that have closed. There is an increasing need when I'm at the doors now that people talk about, Scott, can we get some sort of cottage hospital, outreach clinic? We need something in this riding. We have 120,000 people and we have nothing. So that is one issue that I'm hearing time and time again, and it is one issue that I would like to champion.
Thank you very much. Next, Michael Lutter.
We believe that this is a provincial jurisdiction and that the federal government meddles enough in the healthcare system as it is. And what we want to do quite simply is to incentivize the provinces to deal with their wait times and not simply transfer more money, but transfer tax points to the provinces so that they can deal with their system as they need to. I lost my train of thought there. Recently, a clinic burnt down in the area, and there wasn't funding to rebuild that clinic. That's something that the province needs to step up and say, the clinic burnt down and we are now lacking in this area. They need to take ownership and rebuild that clinic. As a provincial issue, we will still support the provinces, but they need to take ownership for what it is they have.
Thank you. Jonathan Arnold, please.
Thank you. So the National Healthcare Association has come out publicly and said that climate change is the #1 threat to our healthcare system. And that's really simple, because without clean air, clean water, and clean food, you can't have healthcare. You can't have a healthy body. Our diet is a huge burden on our healthcare system. The Green Party of Canada wants to create free dental and pharmacare for all. A national pharmacare system will save $11 billion in buying power alone. It's time we start running our healthcare system like a business. We actually have part of our community that is on a water boiling advisory, which is unacceptable and needs to be addressed immediately. and that's part of our Lake Simcoe cleanup. We need to ensure that our healthcare system starts from the ground up, and that includes environmental policies that make sure we have healthy food on every plate and we have clean air and water to drink. Healthcare is especially lacking in First Nations and underfunded areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith Comer, please.
So I'd like to give you a little idea of how this system that we have right now is set up. First, we pay taxes to the federal government for healthcare, and they allocate some money to each province. And with each one of those, there's conditions to each province. So we pay one layer to the federal government, and then we pay to the provincial government another layer of taxes for healthcare. And with that money, they put that towards meeting the federal government's demands on healthcare. And then we're still short, and we still have this long straight line. So we need to figure out the administration of this. We need to pick a level. Either it's federal or it's provincial. It can't be both. We shouldn't be paying tax dollars to two different entities for one service. That makes no sense whatsoever. So we need to look at that, and we need to streamline that system. Once we do that, that $254 billion is going to go a lot further. I would also hazard that if we need a cottage hospital in this area, we should promote the private enterprise to open that and get them involved. Because right now, one long straight line isn't working.
Thank you. Jess McLean, please.
Okay, I briefly mentioned it before, but I'll say it again. Our healthcare plan is totally comprehensive. So pharmacare, dental, vision, mental health care, hearing. We're also going to improve home care so that seniors can stay at home longer and don't end up in waiting rooms and in the hallways. And I'm glad you took the time to explain how the federal transfers work. Those federal transfers were cut by the Conservative government by $31 billion. The Liberals maintained those cuts. So I'd like to ask Scott how he would possibly get any healthcare funds here when we've shortchanged the provinces so much. We're also going to, 2 million Canadians can't afford pharmacare. And we are the only nation that says we have universal health care, but yet we don't cover those drugs. What is a doctor's appointment if we can't afford the treatment? And I just want to remind you that although it is a provincial jurisdiction, the federal role is pivotal in how the provinces are able to spend those. We can enforce the Healthcare Act. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Davidson, you want to make a comment?
The residents of York-Simcoe, when I go and talk to them, even though this is a provincial jurisdiction, federal leaders are responsible for taking a decisive role in conveying what residents of York-Simcoe expect from their healthcare system. And we have made it quite clear, you are going to be able to count on stable and predictable health and social fundings. We have also recognized that many people are waiting too long for MRI and CT scans. We have also committed to investing $1.6 billion to replace and add new medical imaging equipment to reduce wait times and ensure patients receive quicker, accessible, and reliable for potential life-saving threats.
Okay, Jessa.
I appreciate that, Scott, but you didn't answer my question on how you're going to provide health care when your party has not promised any additional funds to the provinces. They have not promised to restore those cuts. And we can have all the imaging services we want in the world, but if people can't afford the treatments that need to follow, then they're still stuck.
Okay, we're going to go on to our next question, and I'm going to ask Michael Lauder to take this one first. A common saying in finance is, it's not how much you make, but how much you keep. Do you believe our growing government debt is mainly caused by a revenue issue or a spending issue? Please explain your answer.
It's definitely a spending issue. When we are taking $53 billion a year and paying that in interest alone, we have a staggering debt right now of over $780 billion. And the Liberal government said that if they're elected again, they are going to run 4 more years of deficits, adding nearly $100 billion to an already crushing debt. We have a $2 trillion a year economy, and out of that $2 trillion, we have next to nothing to show for it. We're sending our money to the tune of billions of dollars outside the country to develop other countries instead of taking care of our own. The government is too big for what it does with the money. They make promises and are borrowing money to make these promises happen instead of using the money that we have.
Thank you very much. Jonathan Arnold, next, please.
Thank you. So it's a multifaceted answer, unfortunately. So end oil subsidies would be a great start. We've been promised that since the Harper days, and we are subsidizing some of the richest people in the world. And I think we can also all agree that that is absolutely outlandish and outrageous. It drives us to more divisive politics, and we need to start working on taxation. So I'm going to repeat myself again, and I'm sorry to hammer the point home, but tax 0.2% of the wealthiest people, tax Facebook, Amazon, and Google, and make sure that people can get good jobs locally. So a green economy will bring 300,000 jobs into our economy nationwide, and we can disperse the $160 billion that is gobbled up by our oil sector and put it into clean, free, sustainable energy, which helps give our kids something to work towards. We need to work towards making sure our wealth is dispersed equally, and we are working towards fair taxation. Thank you.
Keith Palmer, please.
The issue is neither a revenue it's neither. It's a spending issue, thank you. It's a currency issue. Up until 1974, we only had an $18 billion debt. And in 1974, Trudeau Sr. changed the banking laws and changed the way we create our money. And within 6 years, we went from $18 billion to $300 billion in debt. That's the problem. We need to get back to the Bank of Canada that we had from 34 to 1974. We need to create our own money. We need to spend it into existence instead of borrowing it at interest. We have the capability of doing this. We did it for 40 years. We went through the Depression. We went through a war. We never grew our debt, and we paid for all of it out of our own currency. This is the issue right here, and it's nobody understands it anymore. We need to look at this, and we need to see this as the problem. Once we figure that out, we fix our currency, almost all of the rest of these issues disappear.
Jess McLean.
I'd just like to remind everybody that the national debt that we have is a direct result of the Conservatives and the Liberals. It's a revenue problem and it's a spending problem. Okay, we don't take the money from where we could. Our CRA spends most of their resources coming after taxpayers like you and I. When they ignore the loopholes that exist, they don't go after the offshore tax havens. That's $34 billion they're owed in back taxes, mostly from rich corporations. All of that money is lost to us. The Conservatives will tell you it's a spending problem because what they're promising is nothing but tax cuts. That's going to leave us high and dry. They have no answer for the revenue side. And as for spending, it's partially a spending problem. We give $18.3 billion just to oil and gas executives and projects. We give $3 billion a year in fossil fuel subsidies. We give millions of dollars away to corporations to pay for limousines. I kid you not. So we're willing to spend on the rich, but not our public services. And we're willing to tax middle class, but not the rich.
Thank you very much. Scott Davidson, please.
National debt is a huge factor. And currently right now, we are paying more on interest on the debt than we spend on healthcare. And when you elect me or one of the other candidates here, you are asking us to have good fiscal management of the country. You are taxpayers and you expect that. And you know, I hear this at the doors. It brings us back to healthcare. They say, Scott, we have to clear the hallways. Why are we spending $26 billion to further the debt on pharmacare when we haven't cleared the hallways? And these are the big issues that we always have to think about.
Thank you very much. Our next question will go to Jonathan Arnold first, and that is, what federal initiatives would you enhance or create to help York-Simcoe when it comes to job creation and retention.
Okay, thank you. Clean energy sector. Clean energy sector is a global and national initiative that's going to be the greatest opportunity that our country has ever seen. It's the opportunity to take our wealth back. It's the opportunity to take our energy sector back. And that has been proven in 7 of the 10 best countries in the world. The last 2 countries to get on board, well, the last 3 are Canada, US, and Singapore. All these other nations, Norway, Australia, Germany, Denmark, Switzerland, Netherlands, are 60 to 70% reliant on clean energy that is free once you build the infrastructure. It's going to bring us 300,000 jobs. We're going to start retrofitting homes, and we're going to take the $160 billion that pollutes our planet, and we're going to put it into everyone's pocket in this room where it belongs. Stop oil subsidies and build a clean energy sector that is nationwide. That is the future of our country, that is the future of our economy, and that is our future globally. There is no question, hands down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Keith Comer next, please.
2 things that we would do that would really help out the York-Simcoe riding. Of course, the flat tax, put some more money in your guys' pockets, allow you to spend your money on what you want to. And I think if we fixed our currency and we went back to the way we used to do it and spend it into existence, we have an extension coming, the 400 to the 404 highway. I would love to create the money in the government to spend on that, to hire people locally to build that project. Something like we did back in the 40s and the 50s when we built the Trans-Canada Highway. We created the money to spend it, and we spent it, and it really saved everybody in the country at the time. The St. Lawrence Seaway was the same thing. So if we fix our money and we could create enough, we could build that highway and it wouldn't cost us taxpayers $1.
Thank you very much. Jess McLean.
Okay, first of all, we have to recognize that not every job is a good job. We hear the Liberals bragging about their employment rates, but we know that some of us are working 4 of those jobs and still can't make ends meet. So when we talk about creating jobs, they need to be well-paying, low-carbon jobs. That's exactly what our New Deal does. It creates 300,000 jobs across the country, and like I said, York-Simcoe is most certainly capable of handling some of those. We need them. A lot of our economy here is based on the service sector, and what we're seeing is more and more minimum wage jobs popping up. The 40% of lowest earners are earning less and less, and that's because precarious work is on the rise. And the Conservatives and the Liberals have done nothing to curb this trend. In fact, the policies they pass encourage it. That means if you are contract, if you are part-time, you don't get benefits, you don't know how many hours you're going to get, you don't know if you'll have a job the next year, and that is simply unacceptable. We also need to expand the public sector so we can take control over creating jobs and not leave it to that private sector all the time.
Thank you. Scott Davidson.
Thank you. You know, again, over in Bradford, West Gwillimbury, one of the things you hear a lot and who you talk to a lot is we have the most arable farmland in all of Canada, in the Holland Marsh. And I always say you can move a General Motors plant, but you can't move a farm. And I think with farmers in the riding for infrastructure spending, there's farmers right now that want to get into food processing. They have no internet. That is a federal government responsibility, I feel, that we can provide that funding for internet. They are also sitting out there, and Scott, I would love to become a food processor. Agriculture and food is so important. But guess what? I have phase 1 power. The power grid in Bradford, West Gwillimbury is very weak. So that's where I feel the federal government, and I have already started when I was in Ottawa, is take a leadership role to repair these infrastructures for small business in the riding.
Thank you very much. And Michael Lauder, please.
What we want to do is we want to stop taking billions of dollars from the private sector and redistributing it as subsidies to other corporations, to big corporations. We would instead lower the taxes on businesses and encourage reinvesting to grow that business. We want to eliminate those corporate subsidies, as I said, and other government intervention that unfairly supports and props up businesses with our money, and that's going to save us $5 to $10 billion a year. We want to reduce over the course of one mandate, corporate tax rates from 15 to 10%. This means this measure will make about $9.5 billion available to small businesses. And in the riding of York-Simcoe, we have a lot of small business owners, and as Scott had mentioned, we're a large agricultural area as well. And the money saved will be reinvested into those businesses so they can grow, retain the jobs, and be proper paying jobs that you can survive on.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, Jesse, you wanted to make a comment?
Just really quickly, I want to point out that my opponent here, Scott, he mentioned a single sector, agriculture. That doesn't address the problem. Not only that, with all due respect to the farmers who put foods on our table, they use migrant workers a lot in their employment. Those migrant workers don't fall under the Employment Act. They're paid less than the minimum wage. So this isn't to scapegoat. We need those migrant workers, but that is not a solution that Canadians are looking for.
Thank you. And Keith, I think you wanted to make a comment.
I do. I have two things to say. High-speed internet, the reason we don't have it here is because of the CRTC. They give favors to the two big corporations, and the competition has been wiped out. So get that out of the way and let competition come in. We wouldn't have to pay for this as a government. We wouldn't have to pay for the internet. The private sector would gladly take care of it. And Jessa, when you say you want more control in the government to create jobs, the government is the problem in the first place. And you've been saying it all along. The 150 years of government we've had is an issue, but now you want to give them more control. And the private sector that you speak about that's creating these jobs are all of these people right here. We are the private sector. So I think we are capable of creating those jobs ourselves if the government was out of our way.
Okay, and we also have Jonathan.
I'd just also like to add to our incumbent that our internet services are so poor because of lack of leadership through our liberal and conservative governments for decades. And it's the continued monopoly that's allowed to be processed through our political system. And Bell and Rogers are some of the biggest companies in our nation, and they can sure buy us a whole bunch of hockey rinks and all these types of things, but they can't deliver us with great internet service because they're constantly in the ear of the political system.
Thank you very much. Very quickly, Scott, we have to go on to the next question, so very quickly.
I just want to point to everyone that the government isn't here tonight. I am the incumbent, but I am not the government.
Thank you.
You're right.
Our next question has to do with crime, and I'm going to ask Keith Comer to go first on this. Child abduction and human trafficking are serious and growing crimes in Canada. What is your party doing to protect our children?
Well, there's so many right now victimless crimes that are being prosecuted and pursued by the police that it takes away all of the resources from these actual issues like child abduction. So what we would like to do is we'd like to stop victimless crime prosecution. We would like to see all of that taken off of the criminal code and all of those resources focused on real crimes and real serious issues. That's what we would do.
Okay. Jessica?
Typically when we talk about crime, especially if we're talking about human trafficking, we're talking about exploitation that occurs due to poverty. Poverty is the underlying root cause of violence and a lot of the issues that we face. So the answer is not to get tough on crime. We have tried that since the 80s, and it's been detrimental, particularly to racialized people. Our Indigenous people make up way too far of the population, our prison population, which has been privatized and only makes corporations more money. We need to address the root causes. We need to get mental health care out there for everybody who needs it. We need to get people off of the streets and into homes so they cannot be exploited. And we need to stop blaming people for what happens in society. If we address poverty, if we make life more affordable, if we make housing a human right, these will all go towards essentially eliminating crime. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Davidson, please.
I attended this summer a human trafficking event at the Salvation Army, and it was very moving. And chatting with the victims, one thing they did tell me is they asked for a government that was going to get tougher on these gangs with these people. So I think it's very important that we get tough on the criminals. And that's what a conservative government has vowed to do on this topic.
Thank you very much. Michael Lotter, please.
Human trafficking and child abduction is a despicable crime that needs to be punished accordingly. If people are going to get a slap on the wrist for engaging in human trafficking, child abduction, it's not going to stop them from doing it again. They don't serve enough time in prison. We need to be tough on them. We need to have improved policing tactics to help these people, to help the victims also, because sometimes they're lured into it and they don't even realize what they're doing until they get too deep in. The criminals need to be punished once they are found. They should not get a light sentence. There shouldn't be a slap on the wrist or a community service term for that. It needs to be dealt with, and it needs to be dealt with harshly. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan Arnold, please.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Scott for running as an independent. I didn't realize you weren't going to be tied to your party tonight. That's great. Health and safety of children is the #1 issue for the Green Party. That's what we stand for. We want future generations to have exactly what we had, which is a community. And that's the problem with divisive politics, is it runs into our communities and it divides people. I hear all the time that people don't know their neighbors, and that's a shame. We should build our community strong. Anyone who abducts a child or hurts a child is not of sound mind. I think we can all agree upon that. So we need to deal with mental health crises that are running rampant across our nation. It is a crisis that we need to work on as a community. We need to implement new ideas into our healthcare system to help with this, and we need to make sure that justice is brought to every victim across our nation. Our children are our future, and we need to hold them near and dear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our next question. Capital investment, and this will go to Just McLean. Capital investment contributes to economic growth and higher standards of living through its link to increased labor productivity and technological change. Canada has seen a 50% reduction in capital investment over the last 4 years, while the USA has seen a 38% increase. What will you or your party do to reverse this trend? And Jessica.
The NDP, our Green New Deal, essentially puts significant amount of money into innovative green jobs. We can't just create any old jobs. They need to be well-paying, and they need to set us into the future. We have the capability of being world leaders in this regard if we act boldly now. So the answer isn't to give more money to corporations to train them. We will train and provide mentorship programs for workers to increase labor productivity. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Capital investments, again, I've touched on this, are very important. And those are the big capital investments that we have to make for business in the community. And, you know, the very thing we talked about with internet for small business, people in rural communities, we have to continually make those investments. The Bradford bypass coming. People always ask me on the other side of the lake, how's things on the other side of the lake, Scott? There isn't free movement of goods for business across there. That's something that's been on the books since 1972, and we have to get that done. And that was a commitment that the province made. It was one of my first meetings that I had when I was in Ottawa, and that's what people expect. We expect to get things done, and we need that infrastructure spending in the community.
Thank you very much. Michael Lotter, please.
Capital investment is going to help everybody in this community, including the building of the 400-404 connection that Scott was talking about. We've lost our way on the international stage also. Our foreign trade with China suffered this year because of what happened with our canola product. People don't want to invest in a country where they see that we are flip-flopping between doing business one way and then the following week doing it another way. We need to encourage foreign investment with caveats in it, but also we need to encourage the businesses that we have to grow by reducing their taxes and enabling them to take the money that we leave in their pocket and reinvest it in our community.
Thank you. Jonathan Arnold, please.
Thank you. So first and foremost, our previous governments have sold our industry to every country except for Canada. So currently we take our fisheries and we take all our fish and we ship it to China and they package it and sell it back to us. We take all of our lumber or logs and we ship it to the United States and they process it into wood and then we buy it back from them. We take an abundance of our agriculture and we ship it to the United States and then we buy end products back. And we do the same with our mining, and we're going to subsidize our oil industry to do the same thing when we should take our dirty oil and refine it ourselves and bring industry back to our nation. Secondly, we need to build a green economy. 300,000 jobs across our nation, bringing our power sector back to the people in our community, creating wealth. And lastly, the biggest growth investment was clean energy. People are dumping oil. It is a dying industry, and green energy is the future. If you want to look at the future, look at the investment sector. They're the ones who are projecting all of these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith?
I think the question here is why? Why is business leaving Canada and why is business flocking to the United States right now? And first off, they don't have a carbon tax and we have a pretty stiff carbon tax in Canada. That's a big factor. Another one is the corporate tax. And I'd really like people to understand that taxing a business, as much as you want to say you make a lot of money, I'm going to tax you, they pass it on to you anyways. It's like kicking yourself in the shin and trying to hurt somebody else with it. The more you tax a business, the more they pass it down to you, the more you pay for the end product. Jonathan's right. We need value added in this country, but we need to promote that somehow. We need to draw that in. And the way to do that is to lower those corporate taxes and put them at a flat level with no loopholes and remove the carbon tax.
Thank you. Jess, I think you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, just briefly, I want to remind people what conservative capital investments look like. The 407. So when we get into P3s, that means we essentially partner up with private firms. They're the ones that make all the money. We line the pockets of investment firms instead of the community. Our community benefit agreements that will go along with any infrastructure will ensure that we use local jobs and that it will stimulate the local economy and that we will own what we've built.
Thank you. Our next question, we'll ask Scott Davidson to start, and it is, what do you believe is required to meet the needs of First Nations in Canada?
Thank you. Well, my wife is a member of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, and so is my son. And this has made me keenly aware of contributions, opportunities, issues. I have been so grateful for the relationships and the connections that I've made with our local First Nations. Number one, the first thing that has to be done is the boiled water advisory has to be dealt with. And even under the current Liberal government, I have a place on Georgina Island. And the funding that was necessary for that boiled water advisory to come off for the new water plant, I still do not have water on the east side of Georgina Island. I am still on a boiled water advisory, even once the new plant has been up and running. So that is very important. We also have to reach out to First Nations and partner with them. Partner with them on business projects. Make them part of the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Loder, please.
We need to treat our First Nations with respect that they deserve. In the past, the injustices that were committed happened, and we can't erase that past. What we need to do is look for a way to work together in benefiting the First Nations and also the other Canadian people. We do that with respect. We also want the government to explore further avenues to promote the establishment of individual property rights on reserves and treat them with fairness. And fairness demands that all Canadians and all Canadians benefit from roughly equivalent services wherever they live, which means that we cannot step away from a Grassy Narrows incident and just leave it at that. We need to follow through with commitments that we make and make sure that everybody is treated equally and fairly.
Jonathan Arnold, please.
Thank you. So we need to ratify our UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. first and foremost. That is a UN agreement, a second UN agreement that we're not meeting. And the reason we have a UN is because we have global issues that need to be addressed. The water boiling advisory goes far past the Liberals, 4 years in service, just so everyone's aware. That was under the Conservatives as well. And we need to honor our Chippewa Nation, and we need to stop our sewage plant from going into our lake. The Chippewa Nation is a nation. It's not a community that we consult with. It's a nation of people. They are a governing body, and that needs to be respected. First Nations are falling behind in education, healthcare nationwide, and we need to ensure that we stop building pipelines on their land and make sure they have clean water, which is a necessity for life. It's time we ratify our agreement with the UN. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith Comer, please.
Jonathan and I are starting to agree a little more as we go down the line. It's time. It's time that we dealt with the First Nations, and we had the conversation. They've wanted autonomy for a long time. We need to sort these treaty rights out. We need to settle this, and we need to give them the autonomy that they want. And until we do that, there is no answer.
Thank you. Jessamine.
Okay, well, we do have an answer, and colonialism continues. It's not part of our past, it's part of our present. Child poverty rates on reserves are about 50%, and half of the homes are in dire need of repair. This is a big problem. The NDP will also ratify a document we already signed, but both of our governments have refused to implement it. That ensures Indigenous communities have a say in what happens. We're not just talking about First Nations people, we're talking about Métis, Inuit. It's a large group of people that you're leaving out when you speak. We're also going to end the chronic underfunding of education and child services that exist. That underfunding has been deemed discriminatory by the UN. It is a black stain on our present, not our history. The residential school survivors that the Liberals are still fighting in court, that led to generational trauma that we have yet to address. The NDP has the most comprehensive plan, but we aren't going to talk down. We are going to work with these Indigenous communities to make sure that they have the housing that they need, that they have the education that they need, and we have actually committed a dollar amount of $1.8 billion to fix the drinking water. We're not just going to talk about it.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, what is your, not your party's, but your number one priority should you become the next MP for York-Simcoe? And we're going to start with Michael Lutter.
My number one priority would be to ensure that York-Simcoe gets the respect that we deserve at a federal level. We need to go to the federal government and say, this is what we want in York-Simcoe. We want more businesses. We want more capital investment. We want you to take notice of us. We have an environmental system here that is one of the largest water environmental systems in Canada outside of the Great Lakes, and we need to be able to give that the attention it deserves. Right now we have 3 bodies that manage that, and it causes issues, and we need to be able to take that down to 1 body and manage our ecosystem properly.
Thank you. Jonathan Arnold next,
Thank
please.
you. So electoral reform is the biggest disappointment that I have with our past government right now. Electoral reform is my number one concern, and a close second to that would be climate action. But I don't think we're ever going to see climate action until we see electoral reform, because the way our democracy works is not fundamentally sound. Okay, first. You can all clap for that, that's okay.
Thank you.
I would also like us to work on all of our fresh body waters. So the Great Lakes are actually less protected than Lake Simcoe. So we need to improve the Great Lakes protection immensely, and then umbrella Lake Simcoe under that federal protection, so we don't have provincial governments that don't take the funding and fix our lake. That's our community issue. Lastly, I'd like to talk about a green economy. A green economy allows us to take our power sector and disperse that wealth within our communities, and it's going to allow us to bring our youth back into our working class, and it's going to give empowerment to people and make them feel like our leaders actually care about their future, not corporate interests. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Keith Comer, please.
I really believe that the number one issue that we face across this country, not just here, is our currency problem. I think until we fix our money, until we have sound money, that we are going to continue to lose our value. We're going to continue to have all of these economic problems that we have. So my number one issue is to fix our currency. Give us sound money again. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica McLean, please.
As far as I can remember, I have railed against inequality. Fighting inequality is my number one concern. And I'll tell you, the environment isn't far from my mind, but the reason we can never get a handle on it is because we don't have economic equality. Corporations make the bulk of the decisions that impact us. We don't. And that's because we have no economic power. We don't have social equality. We don't have racial equality. And that is detrimental to us. If we can harness back the power that we were always meant to have in our communities and in our government, anything is possible. So I will tell you again, inequality is by far the biggest issue we have faced. Capitalism has put us into this place, and we need to fight back against its intentional effects that divide us. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott?
The first thing I am going to do is get the York-Simcoe cleanup fund underway. And that, again, is an important issue at the door, is an important issue for me. Some of the other candidates, might use partisan politics on it and say I'm hiding under it, but I am proud of that cleanup fund. It is a vast amount of money, and I would look to you. The environment isn't partisan. I know there's people in this room here tonight that want to sit on some committees and actually help and do something. That's a boots on the ground policy that we can get off the ground way to way to help and protect our lake. So that is my first priority in order to get to work for the riding. It is number one in my books.
Thank you. Keith, I think you wanted to make a comment.
I just want to make a point with what Jess was saying. Capitalism has brought us from the dark ages to where we are now. What you're talking about is cronyism. No, what you're talking about is cronyism. You're talking about government and corporations going into bed together because the government has the power to hand out those favors to the corporations. That is not capitalism. That's cronyism. It's something completely different. It's actually fascism, if you want the definition of it. Capitalism is not what you're saying. Capitalism is free trade between you and me, and I think it's the best thing that we ever had. My ability to trade with another person is number one and paramount for me.
Okay, thank you. Jonathan?
I'd just like to ask Scott, when he funds the York-Simcoe cleanup, what happens when Doug Ford doesn't do anything with that funding? Because he has slashed every environmental policy we have in our province. And I would just like to know why you're hiding behind the lake and you don't want to talk about climate change, and why you would put in a local newspaper that when people protest climate change, they are fear-mongering. Because I think they're in fear, and that is a very different thing. So I'd like to know, where does the funding go when it goes to Doug Ford? And how is that going to help the lake? And how is that a solution to any of our problems?
Okay, I have Jessa next, and then Scott.
Keith, I'm the last person that needs a lesson on what capitalism is and what it isn't. Capitalism is designed to create inequality. It was always designed that way. It's designed to concentrate wealth, and it's predicated on the idea that somehow all that money that is consistently being concentrated in the 1% will trickle down to us. We are still waiting for that to materialize. And when you talk about healthcare, we're talking about socialist ideals that are designed to eat away at the effects of capitalism. And that's all we keep doing, is we eat away at it a little bit, and then yes, the cronyism that exists cuts it all down. So it may be a system that we've always lived under, and it may be unimaginable to get rid of it, but I will tell you the problems that we all live under beyond York-Simcoe will still exist unless we start to challenge that idea.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Scott to respond.
Again, I would ask for all your help with the York-Simcoe Cleanup Fund. It shouldn't be a partisan issue. And the other thing why I say, I have never said about the environment fear-mongering. If someone has written that, Either they've written it wrong or I've been misquoted to correct the record on that. And as far as the funding goes, the great thing with the Lake Simcoe Cleanup Fund, those dollars came directly from Ottawa, directly to the groups that it's going to help. Over 200 local groups. It is not going into the bureaucracy of the province or the bureaucracy of Ottawa so that they can take their little piece. This is an environmental policy that's also going to help in the riding, and I got to tell you, people are excited about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving up to closing statements very soon. I think we've got one question left, although I'm going to only give you a couple of seconds, maybe 20 seconds to answer this. But what keeps you up at night? What is something you are concerned about in our riding? And we're going to start with Jonathan Arnold, please.
Climate change keeps me up at night. My kids' future keeps me up at night. It worries me. Our environmental policies, or lack thereof, the fact that we put corporate interests over our people, the fact that our country is so divided we're starting to look like our neighbors to the south, the fact that we don't accomplish anything keeps me up at night every day, the fact that we can't work together to make a better future for our children.
Okay, thank you. Keith Comer, please.
What keeps me up at night is that our country is sliding away from freedom and heading back into socialism. And we've got to stop it. We need to stay free. My father escaped a communist country to come to a free country, and I'd hate to see us lose that.
Okay, thank you. Jess McLean, please.
What keeps me up at night is the sense of powerlessness that most of us feel in terms of fighting for climate justice, or against climate justice, for getting ourselves out of poverty, for making a difference in our government. We all feel so powerless that many of us have checked out. We've become apathetic to the causes.
Scott Davidson, please.
I think one thing that keeps me up at night that hasn't been discussed tonight is our global place in the world and the global economy. We have to keep in mind NAFTA hasn't been ratified yet, and with everything that's going on in the global economy with China, there are headwinds on the revenue side for businesses, and we have to be very mindful of that.
Okay, thank you. And Michael Lauder, please.
What's keeping me up at night is the lack of unity that we have as a country. We're all divided into blocks, and we all fight against each other trying to achieve the same goal. What we need to do is we need to be united and present that front, as Scott said, to a global stage. We don't need to be divided. We're all Canadian, and that's the first thing that we have to look at.
Thank you very much. So that concludes the question part of our debate, our Q&A. And at this point, we're going to ask our candidates to present their closing statements. And as promised, we're going to do this in reverse order. So I'm going to ask Jonathan Arnold to begin.
Thank you. Well, I'm not a doom and gloom kind of guy. I don't see climate action as the end of something. I don't see it as people taking away anything from us. I see it as the best opportunity we've ever had to fix a lot of the deficiencies in our economy and our country. I see the beginning as something great. I do see a plethora of challenges, but within those challenges, I see opportunity. I see education for all, and we're the last G7 country other than the United States that put that in place. I see healthcare and pharmacare for everybody. I see clean air, I see clean water, and I see healthy food on the plate of every home in our country. We can accomplish this by stopping oil subsidies, fair taxation, and bring new business opportunities. We can rebuild our industry. We can take our oil sector and build a refinery. We can take our agriculture and stop exporting it. We can take our fisheries and start value adding. And we can take our forestry and lumber and process it ourselves. We can create a green energy sector that creates 300,000 jobs across our nation. We can retrofit every home in our country to make it more sustainable. I see people voting for something. I see people voting for change. I see people voting for hope. And I want to get behind that. I want to be a part of that change. And I thank everyone for coming tonight and giving us the opportunity to present our platform. And I truly believe that the Green Party of Canada is the greatest option that we have in this election. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Michael Lauder, please.
I'd like to thank everybody for participating in this very important debate. And on election day, we have a very big decision to make. Our choice is to continue down a very dangerous path following the cycle of electing globalists to represent us in government, or to change the way we do politics and elect a party that will fulfill promises because they are logical and put Canadians first. We have had governments which have signed us up to UN compacts and accords which have hurt our economy and slowly eroded our Canadian identity. The People's Party of Canada will remove us from UN commitments which do not benefit Canada economically or socially. This will include removing us from the Paris Accord, eliminating the carbon tax, which was forced on us to fund a UN development fund, remove us from the UN Migration Pact, and secure our borders. We will reduce taxes without needing to cut services, and we'll do this by stopping foreign aid other than humanitarian aid to countries that don't need it. Cutting corporate welfare will add billions more to our economy, and the billions of dollars in tax savings for businesses will encourage the growth and investment in our economy and stimulate job growth. A government which buys your taxes on borrowed money, or buys your votes with your taxes and borrowed money, does not have the best interests of our country in mind. Not balancing a budget, but running deficits for 4 more years will put us under crushing debt with annual interest payments of $53 billion. We can ill afford to add more fiscal strain to our economy. On election day, let's make a choice to steer Canada back to being an independent, prosperous country governed by a party which is elected by you and will put your interests above all else. On election day, make a difference and vote People's Party of Canada.
Thank you, Scott Davidson.
Thank you again to the Georgina Chamber and Rogers TV for the opportunity to discuss the issues that matter to York-Simcoe. And thank you to my fellow candidates. While we may not agree on the appropriate solutions to the many challenges our community and country faces, I applaud you all for your willingness to serve. Today, the residents of York-Simcoe are under pressure and worried about their future. Under Justin Trudeau, their dreams have gotten further out of reach and life has become more expensive. I believe that if you work hard, you should be able to buy a home, save for retirement, and care for your children and your parents as they age. Canada's Conservatives have a plan that will mean real results for you and your family, and we will put more money in your pockets and make life more affordable for you. I am confident that I am the most experienced and capable person to stand up for York-Simcoe and Ottawa as your Member of Parliament, and I am committed to delivering the results for our community and the people who live here, as this is my home as well. I have never wavered from this dedication since earning the trust of the residents in the by-election earlier this year, and I look forward to earning that trust once more. On October 21st, re-elect Scott Davidson as your Conservative Member of Parliament. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you. Jessa McLean.
When I ran in the by-election and as I run now, it's never been about me. It's about restoring power to where it belongs, and that's with the people. I support the NDP because I'm proud of our platform that puts people first and ends corporate influence. I'm proud of our healthcare plan head to toe. I'm proud of our ambitious plan to tackle climate change. I am proud that we stand by Indigenous people and we vow to do the right thing. This is why I run for the NDP. And I want to remind you that my party doesn't have to win for me to be an advocate for you in Ottawa. Tommy Douglas and the NDP brought us our precious health care without being in power. This is shaping up to be a minority government. And the more power you give the NDP, the more power you give yourselves, and not corporate lobbyists and not people that are part of the 1%. That's enough is enough. Break from your old voting habits. Reject strategic voting that's only ever benefited the Liberals. And it benefits them because they refuse to enact electoral reform. Speak with your values. All the questions we heard today essentially revolve around inequality. Can't pay my groceries, the healthcare sucks, I can't afford a home. They don't solely revolve around a lake cleanup fund. We need to expand our minds as to what is possible, and only the NDP has that kind of comprehensive platform. And I'll remind you to all the naysayers, I have clearly given you a plan to pay for this in the billions and billions of dollars that we're going to get from closing tax loopholes, from stop handing out millions of dollars to corporations. And on record, provincially, the NDP is the most fiscally responsible when we've been putting power into provinces. So don't let people tell you what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. I've told you what I'm going to do. And I work as a community organizer. I constantly fight for a better way. I constantly fight to amplify marginalized voices, and I will continue to do that. Put a knowledgeable, passionate person in there for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith Comer next, please.
I'm in a unique position. Our party is small. We're not going to take Ottawa, so I don't have to sit here and pander. I don't have a platform to throw at you that offers you the world. I can tell you truths. I can speak from my heart and tell you the truth. And the truth is, our currency is wrecked. We need to fix our money. It is one of the biggest issues that we face in this country right now. Our debt exists because of our currency being usurped by the IMF. Nobody else talks about it. Everybody wants to throw Band-Aids on it. We're not even in the conversation. And it's the number one issue that we face. So you guys, you need to see that for yourselves. Whether you do or not, I don't know. But that's my point here, is we need to look past the surface of this, where everybody's promising you something and it just never helps. It's not the solution. They're all Band-Aids. We need to look deeper than that. Whether you vote for me or not, it's up to you. I'm happy if you do. If you don't, I understand. I get it. But we have to look down the table and see what's being offered here, and understand that, like, I lived in BC under the NDP. $1.70 a litre of gas didn't appeal to me. I've been under conservative governments. It never helped. I've been under liberal governments. Look at what we're at. And Jonathan, I can't say I've been under a green government. Actually, they're kind of in BC a little bit there. Just wait. So, and Michael, you're brand new, but you guys have choices here, but you need to get past the surface and look past the promises and see what people are actually going to do for you in Ottawa. Thank you.
That is all the time we have this evening, and I want to thank our candidates for their participation, the Georgina Chamber of Commerce, and Rogers TV for their sponsorship. I also want to thank our audience here at the Link, our crew, and I want to thank you for watching. We hope these discussions will be helpful when you cast your ballot on October the 21st. Now all you have to do is go out and vote. I also would ask you not to forget to watch our live coverage of the local results on election night at 9:30 on Rogers TV. So thank you very much for being with us here on Rogers TV, Georgina.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Wesley Eskima. I am your Liberal candidate for York-Simcoe. I want to invite you to join me in Bradford at Hey Carumba on October 15th and 17th from 3 to 7 o'clock p.m. to have a conversation, to have some food, and to ask the kinds of questions that you need to ask about the person that's representing you in your riding. If you can't make it on October 15th and 17th, please join me on October 20th at Mexicanada from 4 to 6 p.m. for more music, more food, more conversation, and an opportunity to ask why I'm running in your riding. I have lived on Georgina Island for the past 15 years. I'm very familiar with the concerns for the lake. I believe in the environment and what we need to do to make sure that it's safe. I believe in the farmers and the food. We need food to continue to live and to be able to be healthy. I want to talk to you about immigration and the people that are moving into our riding. I want to talk to you about overpopulation. I want to talk to you about transportation. I want to talk to you about our children and the future of our children and the care that they will receive under the guidance of the Liberal Party of Canada. I want to be able to spend some time answering your questions, asking you questions about what's important for you. I want to listen to what you have to say. I want to take your voice to Ottawa. I have a strong voice, a good education, a strong background in public education, and I believe it's important to listen to what people want to know in the riding and to take that forward. The Liberal Party of Canada wants to represent you, wants to ensure that you have an affordable quality of life as we move forward into the future, and I'm the woman who's going to make sure that you're listened to and that your voice is heard loudly and proudly in Ottawa. Please come and join me in Bradford at Hey Carumba and Mexicanada on October 17th, 15th, and on the 20th for a conversation. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to meeting you.